Baru mandi ya? Ya. Nah, aku kerjanya jam 3 sore, jadi aku aja baru bangun tadi jam berapa tuh? Aku baru bangun jam berapa ya? Aku baru bangun jam berapa ya tadi aku bangun ya? Kayaknya aku bangun jam setengah 12 tadi. Aku kondisi perut lapar, belum makan. Terus ya pokoknya I'm very hungry, I'm starving. Aku belum makan. Kamu tinggal di mana? Aku tinggal di Bali. Aku belum menyentuh namanya food at all. Udah mandi ya, menurut lo aja nih rambut basah emang belum mandi namanya. Aku udah keringin, tapi aku mager keringin semuanya karena capek. BTW aku lapar banget, jadi aku lagi masak nasi karena aku mau makan nasi sama abon. Ini akhir bulan ya guys, bokeh nggak ada duit sama sekali anjir sumpah. Nggak ada duit sama sekali guys. Jadinya aku harus berhemat my food. Ya kurang kering berarti. Yaudahlah kita biarin dia air dry aja karena aku mager aku males banget mau keringin rambut lagi anjir, kayak udah gak ada energi lagi. Biarin dia kering sendiri gak sih? Tapi jelek. Tapi jelek. Aku capek banget anjir kerja. Bukan kerja lagi, magang guys. Even worse karena kalian gak dibayar. Aku kayak gimana ya rasanya? Ya sih dapat sertifikat, cuman kayak tetap capek anjir. Aku mukanya masih bangun tidur banget, what the fuck. Setiap aku masak sesuatu di sini tuh pasti panas banget. Kayaknya aku harus buka pintunya deh. Komen guys, gabut banget anjir sumpah. Loving in your eyes. Hi, Miguel. Thank you. Aku do my makeup a little bit because I don't know, I feel naked. I've never known someone tangled in love, stuck by you from the clue. Don't forget to kiss me, or else you'll have to miss me. I guess I'm stuck forever by the glue. Won't you? Semangat kak. Mau I think I wanna dry my hair a bit more. Nasinya udah matang belum ya? Guys, aku masak nasi kan, terus aku kayak mau tahu dia udah matang atau belum. So aku bakalan coba nasinya. Harusnya udah ya. Udah sih harusnya. Kan a bit more. Mirip Kenzie. Aku lebih cakep. Halo po, nggak kerja nanti jam 2, jam 3 Bali ya. Berarti jam 2 kalian yang di jam Jawa. Aduh maaf gue pil. Normal guys, I'm a human. I'm just a girl, I'm still a human too. Banget guys, kerja apa cantik. Aku magang di hotel. Kalau penasaran bisa nonton video TikTok aku. Mau kemana manis? Telat masuk ya, tapi aku malas banget jelasinnya nanti ada shift aja kerja gitu, nggak kemana-mana nih. Aneh ya listnya. Bagus banget. Apanya yang bagus ya? Bikin kumis kak, nggak bisa. Guys, kalian banyak yang nonton gak ada yang tap-tap anjir. Aku emosi deh, pengen marah-marah rasanya. What the fuck did you guys do gitu loh. Cuacanya panas banget. Sumpah nggak bohong, panas banget. What the fuck, kalian ngapain aja guys? Gak ada yang tap-tap sama sekali kayak. And I'll be the one that proposes in a garden of roses and truly love you long after our curtain closes. But will you still love me when nobody? Guys, tap ya guys, tap ya guys. Aku mau PK abis ini. When I turn 81 and forget things, will you still be proud? 'Cause I am the one. Aku belum pakai makeup kecuali. Aku masih belum di make upin. Kalian hari ini plannya kemana aja guys? Aku sih aku males anjir, aku males banget magang sumpah. Usah 3 kali sama buat apa? Dieditin kan? Halo guys, kalian tuh kalau aku pikir ya guys, kalian nggak bisa ngasih gift nggak apa-apa guys, yang penting kalian tap terus lah guys, jangan kalian jadi silent cuman kayak penonton batu doang anjir. Aku lagi pikir terus kayak kalian komen nggak, kasih gift nggak, tap nggak, aku malu anjir kalau mulu. Di mana? Di rumah lah. Nice to meet you. 1, 2, 3 dan udah. Koko from Singapore. Hi. Hi Jelly, hi Chell. Start to wonder why all. Jangan bilang Spotify aku nggak premium lagi. Kalau ya aku harus renew. You better cut that girl loose. Sekarang nggak bisa magang di SG sayang, kecuali kamu kuliah di sana. Aku nggak ada bilang aku pengen magang di SG waktu itu loh, di Bali. Makanya munduran dikit, nggak mau komen-komen cabul, aku blok langsung. Di Indonesia mana? Bali sekarang. Anjir aman kok, nggak kena banget. Aku lapar banget. Ayo kita makan guys, karena kayak anjir lah, aku lapar banget guys, sumpah nggak bohong, aku lapar banget. Aku makannya sederhana aja. Aku makan makannya very simple, sederhana aja guys. Aku mau makan nasi sama abon sama kari kriuk. Masak apa? Nggak masak. Aku masak nasi doang. Aku mau makan abon soalnya lapar. Traktir Cece Livi guys di bio. Iya bener banget anjir. Makasih ya yang udah komen. Guys, traktir aku di bio guys. Kalian bisa beli foto Livi yang imut ini dan seksi. Ini nasinya sekali makan aja lah kayaknya. Oh kebanyakan sih, cuman kalau kesimpan nggak bakalan aku makan lagi, jadi aku habisin aja biar kenyang sampai sore ya guys. Banyak banget anjir nasiku. It's okay girl. Udah aku habisin deh nasinya. Porsi kuli guys makannya. Oke, aku makan sepiring full ini guys. Aku pakai ini abon. Aku dikasih abonnya guys, dan aku kayak bahagia sekali. Aku bahagia mendapat abon gratis ya. Iya. Panas aja. Tambahin telur. Kebetulan telurku habis ya. Nanti aku beli. Pakai ini bubuk cabai. Tambahin kriuk-kriuk. Ini. Hai. Terus jadi deh plate my meal with me. Yummy. Saya makan pakai tangan gak sih guys biar kalian ngiler. Nah, ini kan nggak makan. Abon, basreng, bon cabe. Enak. Enggak masak sendiri. Nasinya ya masak sendiri. Bisanya ada jadi. Thank you kakaknya. Enak. Aku tambahin minyak wijen dikit lah. Pasti kalian bakal komen, Kak kalau makan duduk. Oke. Aku duduk. I'm sad. Guys, selamat datang semuanya. Ada meja nih. Iya sama abon. Iya kerja siang. Pedas guys.
Imagine a slave market at the Forum Borarium in Rome. The auctioneer shouts, Greek boy, 12 years old, can read and write. Starting bid, 1,500 denarii. Who's going higher? Chalk on his feet marks him as newly arrived. Next to him stands a worn-out Thracian farmhand going for just 500. On the platform, a young Syrian woman, her beauty alone priced at 6,000. So how did the Romans put a price on a human life? What affected those prices? And how do these amounts compare to modern money? Let's break it down. Slave markets were the born heart of Rome's slave trade. People were bought and sold as casually as we buy a new phone today. And just like us, the Romans loved paperwork. Every sale came with a contract, receipts for the money, and written proof of delivery, not of goods, but of people. Because of that, we now have a window. Because of that, we now have a window, not of goods, but of people. Because of that, we now have a window to the fall of the Western Empire. Naturally, prices changed over time, rising and falling with wars, the economy, and shifts in society. In this video, we're focusing on a specific stretch of time, from the 1st century BC to the 2nd century AD. Why this period? Because it's simply the one we know the most about. Take the Corpus Inscriptionum Latinarum, a massive collection of all known Latin inscriptions. It spans 17 volumes, and 16 of them come from the imperial period. The same goes for literature. About 90% of surviving Roman texts were written during this era. Even famous authors from the Republic like Cicero, Caesar, and Lucretius were active in its final years. Altogether, over 90% of our sources on ancient Rome come from just the last 40% of its history. So it's no surprise that this is the period most historians rely on. But it's not just about having more records. This was also the peak of Roman slavery. After Caesar's campaigns, the markets were flooded with hundreds of thousands of captives, and at the same time, the Roman economy was still relatively stable. That's what sets this period apart from later centuries, which saw rising inflation and a collapsing currency. It's during this window that we get the clearest picture of how the Roman slave market really worked, with consistent prices, clear standards, and a fully developed system. Put simply, this 250-year stretch is ideal for study. It gives us a wealth of sources and a fully developed slave market to examine. So what determined whether a slave was priced at 500 or 5,000 denarii? The Romans approached this with cold, calculated logic. They valued people the way they value livestock. The first thing that affected a slave's price was their origin. Romans held strong, often stereotypical views about different ethnic groups. Greeks, for example, were seen as cultured, educated, and intelligent. They were also thought to be less likely to run away or rebel, which made them highly sought after. Greek slaves were typically used for household duties, childcare, or as personal assistants and secretaries. Gauls and Germans were valued for their physical strength and toughness, which made them ideal for gladiator training. Gauls had a reputation for being rebellious, while Germans were seen as loyal to their masters. They were often bought specifically for hard labor, farming, construction, mining, or even as personal bodyguards, especially if they had gladiatorial experience.
Hi guys.
Slaves from the East were viewed differently. Syrians, Phoenicians, and Judeans were considered skilled in crafts, money lending, and trade. They were often thought of as clever and shrewd in business. Because of that, they were frequently purchased to manage estates or oversee profitable businesses on behalf of their owners. Slaves from newly conquered territories were usually cheaper, but that changed as those regions became more Romanized. Once the locals started speaking Latin, learned to read and write, and adopted Roman customs, their market value went up. Another major factor was skill and education. Unskilled laborers were at the bottom of this price range, while slaves with valuable trades, literacy, or a classical education, especially those fluent in Latin and other languages, were worth much more. A basic slave with no special talents might just go for a few hundred denarii, but a skilled craftsman could fetch 10 times that. Pliny the Younger mentions a shoemaker who was sold for 4,000 denarii. For comparison, a regular legionary at the time earned about 20 denarii a month. Intellectual professions were valued even higher. There are accounts of a Greek grammarian being sold for 10,000 denarii and a doctor for 20,000, about the cost of a small house in Rome. The poet Martial writes about a cook who specialized in exotic recipes. He sold for a jaw-dropping 100,000 denarii, the price of a full country estate. And a talented Greek actor named Panurgus reportedly sold for an astonishing 700,000 denarii. Slaves like that weren't just hired help, they were status symbols, bought to show off wealth, sophistication, and taste. The third major factor was age. Slaves between 15 and 25 were the most expensive, old enough to work hard, young enough to last for decades. Children were more of a gamble. Infants and toddlers were often sold cheaply. Sometimes even given away for free with their mothers, since there was no guarantee that they would survive. But once a child reached around 10, their price started to rise. Romans saw them as a good investment, young, easy to train, and already capable of helping out. Wealthy families would sometimes buy children to raise alongside their own as companions for their sons and daughters. These vernae, or homeborn slaves, were especially prized for their loyalty. After 25, a slave's value began to decline. By the age of 40, they might be worth only half of what they would have fetched in their prime. After 50, a slave was considered old and only valuable if they had specialized skills. Many elderly slaves were simply freed, not out of kindness, but to avoid the cost of feeding and housing them. If they were sold at all, it was often for a token amount. We even have records of 60-year-old slaves being sold for as little as 100 denarii, or less. That said, there were exceptions. An experienced doctor or teacher could still bring in a decent price thanks to their knowledge. A trusted estate manager who knew all the inner workings of a household could remain useful well into old age. But for most slaves, getting older meant simply becoming invisible, and expendable at that. A slave's physical traits were another major factor in their price. For laborers, strength was everything. A tough, physically fit worker who could handle farm work or construction was far more valuable than a slim, delicate youth with no experience in manual labor. At auctions, slave traders would often make slaves lift or carry heavy stones to show off their strength and endurance. Any visible defect, a limp, a deformity, or a chronic illness, could significantly lower their price. But when it came to household slaves, the standards were completely different. Beauty took center stage, especially for young boys and girls. Light skin and hair, symmetrical facial features, and graceful hands were all highly prized. Slaves with potential were often fattened up, groomed, and given cosmetic treatments before being sold to make them look as attractive as possible. An exotic appearance, like dark skin, could also increase a slave's value. Some wealthy Romans even curated their entire households to match a specific look. All blondes from Britain or all dark-skinned Ethiopians, for example. The inspection process at the market was deeply invasive and humiliating. Buyers would examine teeth, muscles, and skin for any marks or scars. Slaves were often forced to jump, run, or perform physical tasks on the spot. In theory, sellers were required to disclose any illnesses or physical defects, but in practice, they often went to great lengths to cover these up. The fifth major factor was gender, and it essentially created two very different markets. Male slaves were far more common than females. Healthy adult men were seen as the most versatile labor force, always in demand and with steady prices. Their value came down to a few practical questions. Could he work? How hard? And for how long? Women, on the other hand, were judged by a broader and more complicated set of criteria. While they did plenty of work in the home, the kitchen, or in textile workshop,
Aku cuci piring dulu ya. Jalan-jalan. Siapa yang nggak mau jalan-jalan? Coba. Aku sih mau ya. Aku banyak banget makannya, anjir, sampai opsi. Aku selalu taruh semua barang ke kulkas, jadi kayak lagi nggak pengen pike dulu sekarang, nanti dulu. Enak kenapa? Aku kenyang banget, sumpah.
Their price was also shaped by things like youth, beauty, and virginity. These qualities could dramatically increase their value, sometimes far beyond their actual labor potential. A young, attractive woman might go for 6,000 denarii, while a man the same age might sell for only 2,000. Reproductive ability also added another layer to this. Women who could have children, future slaves, were considered a smart long-term investment, since children born to enslaved women are automatically enslaved. Women of childbearing age were especially valuable on large estates that planned for the future. Some roles specific to women came with extra price tags. Wet nurses, for example, were expensive. Many wealthy Roman women refused to breastfeed themselves, thinking it beneath them. A healthy wet nurse could sell for 3,000 denarii or more. Midwives were even more valuable, as were women trained in cosmetics, hairstyling, and skincare. Then there was sexual attractiveness, a factor that often influenced the price of young girls and boys. In many cases, they were valued less for their ability to work and more for their potential use in sexual exploitation. These traits were sometimes openly listed in sale descriptions and could drive prices as high as those for elite craftsmen. Slave prices in Rome were also shaped by market forces. Just like today, supply and demand played a major role, but the swings could be much more dramatic. The biggest factor was war. After successful campaigns, Roman legions would return with thousands of
Guys, kalau aku pikir kalian mau bantu tap-tap gak guys? Kayak bantu support aku tap-tap layar gitu guys.
Campaigns, there were so many new slaves.
Kalau kalian gak mau, aku gak jadi pikir deh.
Complained about losing profits. It's estimated that nearly 1 million slaves entered the market after Caesar's Gallic Wars alone. During long periods of peace, prices went up. By the 2nd century AD, as Rome's borders stabilized and military conquest slowed, war captives dried up. The slave market began to rely more on breeding within the empire and trading with tribes outside its borders. Location mattered as well. Rome had the highest prices. It was a prestigious market with wealthy buyers and constant demand. A slave who might sell for 2,000 denarii in the capital could go for just 800 in a frontier town. Egyptian papyri showed even lower prices, partly because Egypt had its own trade routes linked to Nubia and the Red Sea.
Kali 2 guys, double guys, kali 2 kan. Kau mau kasih gift sekarang guys, biar poinnya ke double guys.
Most expensive just before the harvest, when labor
Let's
was
go. Hi
in
Jorky.
After the harvest, the same slaves might sell for a third less. Experienced traders took advantage of these cycles, buying in the winter when demand dropped, and reselling in the spring before planting season. To get a better sense of how the Romans priced their slaves, let's take a look at a few example
Double
cases.
guys.
For example, a man from Gaul, 22 years old, strong and physically fit, experienced in farm work, but missing 2 fingers on his right hand. Or, for example, an older Greek man, 55 years old,
Gak magang kafein nanti jam 3 baru mulai shiftnya
well-versed in
sayangku.
philosophy and rhetoric, and has years of teaching experience. On the downside, his age is a significant drawback. Another lot is a boy from Numidia, just 11 years old, healthy and quick to learn with an exotic appearance, but no particular skills. Next for sale is a beautiful Syrian girl, 17
Masih ada
years
3 menit guys,
old,
jangan
striking features
kendor-kendor
and fair
guys.
skin, trained in dancing and singing, skilled cook,
Satu
speaks
guys,
Greek, and comes from a region known for
satu mawar
capable
guys,
household
satu
workers.
koin guys.
Another
Satu
example
orang
is a
kasih
strong
gift guys,
Thracian man,
please.
28 years old,
Hai kakak orang
well-built
mana?
and with combat
Jakarta.
experience,
Tapi
trained
aku
in
sekarang lagi
gladiator
di
school,
Bali
but
karena
has
aku
old
magang.
wounds and visible facial
Berapa
scars.
lama? Setengah tahun.
The final lot is a changed Germanic man, 25 years old,
Guys, satu orang kasih gift guys.
ideal for hard labor. However, he's branded with the letter
Peluk.
F on his forehead, meaning
Skip.
fugitive. He
Gak
tried to run
boleh,
away
gak
from his
bisa,
previous
gak
master.
mau.
Now, how do you convert ancient Roman prices into modern terms? Honestly, it's not easy, and there is no
Aku harus
single right answer.
siap-siap sih abis
One of
ini.
the simplest methods is to look at the silver content of the coin and compare it to today's silver prices. A denarius contained about 4.5 grams of silver, which would make it worth around $6 today. Straightforward, sure, but that doesn't really tell us much about what the coin would actually buy back then. Another way is to compare the prices of everyday items,
Bisa 2 menit
things
guys.
like bread, meat, or eggs, and just see how far a denarius went compared to modern money. For example, graffiti in Pompeii shows that 1 denarius could buy about 4 kilos of pork, or roughly 2.5 kilos of beef or lamb. A whole chicken cost 2 denarii. Based on that, the spending power of a denarius might be somewhere in the range of $20 to $25. You can also look at wages. Under Augustus, a Roman legionary earned about 225 denarii a year. Today, a U.S. soldier makes roughly $46,000 annually, which would put the value of a single denarius at around $200. Another comparison is grain. A bushel of wheat today costs around $6. In early imperial Rome, a bushel went for about 2
1
to 4
menit guys,
denarii.
jangan kalah
By that
guys.
logic, 1
Nanti
denarius could be
ngilangin
worth
win
between
streak aku yang udah sekali.
$1.50 and $3. As you can see, the numbers are all over the place. Depending on the method, you can get anywhere from $2 to $170 for a single denarius. That's because the Roman economy was completely different from ours. None of these comparisons tell the whole story. For example, looking at wheat prices then and now misses the point. Modern farming uses machines, fertilizers, and high-yield crops. Roman farming relied on manual labor, oxen, and rain. The time and effort involved and the value of the overall product were totally different. That's why in this video, we're not going to try to convert Roman prices directly into dollars. Instead, we'll show you what you could actually buy with a certain amount of money, because that's the only way to really understand what 500 denarii
Kakak jomblo ya,
meant
emang.
in the world of ancient Rome.
Dari dulu.
You're 17 years old in Japanese-occupied Korea in 1941 when they come.
Sisa 20 detik guys, jangan sampai kalah ya
The
guys,
village of Andong
please.
shivers under colonial rule. Japanese soldiers patrol like wolves. Your Korean name has been replaced with Yamamoto Junko. And speaking your mother tongue earns you bloody knuckles from the teacher's stick.
no,
Your family is
guys.
starving. Your father works 16-hour factory shifts for pennies. Your mother's fingers bleed from endless mending. And your 14-year-old brother coughs like he's dying from the inside out. Winter has been brutal. Rice is rationed. And the rent collector circles like a vulture. Then two officials arrive with an interpreter whose eyes won't meet yours.
Umur
Factory
berapa?
work in Manchuria.
20. Bentar lagi aku ulang tahun
Showing
tahu guys.
photographs of
Tapi kayaknya
smiling
ulang
girls
tahun
in clean
tersedih
uniforms.
seumur hidupku
Good
deh ini.
wages, regular meals, honorable service to the empire. Your daughter will send money home and return with valuable skills.
Hai.
Promised wage is more
Ini
than your
ulang tahun
father makes in
tersedihku
3
karena
months.
satu,
Brother
aku
needs medicine.
hidup
and mother
sendirian.
counts the
Dua,
advance payment
gak ada
with
yang nemenin
shaking
aku.
hands.
Tiga,
More cash than
aku
the family
membiayai
has
hidupku
seen in
sendiri.
years. Many girls from neighboring villages
Kayak
have already
aku kayak
volunteered.
sebatang kara
The interpreter
anjir sekarang
continues.
rasanya.
This opportunity won't last
Kayak
long.
nggak punya
You
orang
want to
tua
refuse.
gitu loh.
Every instinct screams against their too smooth promises
Kayak nggak punya
and
keluarga
predatory
sih
eyes.
lebihnya.
Your brother coughs in the next room. Your father's hands shake from exhaustion. Your mother's tears have worn permanent tracks down her cheeks. I'll do it, you whisper, the words tasting like betrayal. 3 days later, you board a freight train with 11 other girls, clutching a cloth bundle containing everything you own. A family photo, your grandmother's silver hairpin, and a notebook of secret Korean poems. You don't know you're packing for hell. The train journey becomes a nightmare parade of red flags. Guards with rifles replace the polite officials. The promised meals are rice balls handed out once daily. There's no toilet, just a bucket for 12 girls. By day 3, Mi Young from the village north of yours develops a fever. By day 7, she dies in your arms. The guards drag her body out like garbage and leave her beside the tracks. Clean up the mess, they tell you. As if she was refuse instead of a person with a name and a family waiting for letters
Masuk
that
21,
will never
enggak,
come.
aku
The
ulang
train
tahun
stops at
20
Perth,
nanti,
thousands
aku
of miles from the
2005.
promised Manchuria. Military trucks transport you through
Semoga
jungle.
tahun depan menjadi tahun
compounds
lebih
surrounded by
baik ya
double
guys buat
rows of
hidupku
barbed
anjir
wire.
karena aku
Guard towers rise from each corner.
Atau ya,
Searchlights already beginning their evening sweep.
umur 19
Commander
tuh
Sato
kayak
addresses your group with a
susah
matter-of-fact
banget,
tone
anjir.
of someone reading a supply manifest. You are here to serve the sexual needs of the
Iya,
Imperial
kenapa
Japanese
umur
Army.
19
You will
udah
serve as
susah?
soldiers
Iya,
according to
kalau
the
kamu jadi
schedules
aku
we
sih
provide.
susah.
You will not resist, refuse, or attempt escape. The jungle will kill you
Everything
faster than
happen
we will.
di
But we will
umur
kill you
19.
if necessary.
Ini kayak
You are
umur
assigned
terkutuk
number
anjir.
7, the name Tanaka Michiko, and a room barely large enough for a sleeping mat and water basin. The wooden placard nailed above your door replaces your identity. That's who you are now, a number. The first soldier comes that very night, young, maybe 20, with soft features that might have been kind in another life, but his eyes are empty, his hands rough, and he speaks Japanese words you don't understand, while he destroys everything you thought you knew about your own body. You try to disappear into memories of your mother's garden, your father reading newspaper by lamplight, but the pain keeps pulling you back. When it's over, you lie on your mat, understanding that the girl who boarded the train in Ando just died. By your first week's end, you serviced 47 soldiers. You count because your mind needs something to hold on to, some way to measure time in a place where days blur into endless violation. Time becomes fluid. Days measured not by sunrise but by soldier rotations, meal deliveries, weekly medical examinations that feel like additional violations. You turn 18 sometime in 1942, though birthdays don't exist here. You develop mental compartmentalization so complete you learn to separate consciousness from flesh entirely. While soldiers use your body, your mind retreats to a small, clean room where you sit with your grandmother, embroidering flowers that will never fade. Su Jin, another survivor, becomes your lifeline. She teaches you which guards can be bribed, which soldiers turn violent when drunk, how to fake illness convincingly enough to earn rest without triggering punishment. Make them see you as slightly more human than the others, she whispers. But not so human, you become a threat. Some girls develop different coping mechanisms. Kyung-sun stops speaking entirely. Jung-mi talks to herself in rapid whispers that sound like prayer, but use no recognizable words. You perfect the art of absence, floating above scenes while your body endures what cannot be survived. By 1944, chronic pain settles into your joints. Your teeth loosen from vitamin deficiency. Infections linger for weeks without proper medicine. New girls arrive sporadically. You teach them survival rules. Don't fight unless fight will win. Remember your real name, but only in your head. Save strength for surviving, not for gestures that accomplish nothing. Some listen, others break within weeks. You perform small rituals for girls who don't survive, whispering their real names to jungle spirits, promising their stories won't be forgotten. August 1945. Japan
Komen guys,
surrenders.
aku kayak
Nobody
kesepian
unlocks
banget. Anjir,
your
aku
door.
sedih banget.
Officers burn papers behind the administrative building, and rumors spread of some posts disposing of women. Commander Sato announces transport will be arranged for your relocation. Jin overhears guards talking. They're eliminating evidence before evacuation. All evidence. You escape during the darkest pre-dawn hour, cutting through barbed wire with a stolen kitchen knife, following Sujin's hand-drawn map towards a river 2 miles northeast. The jungle swallows you immediately. A wall of green so dense you lose sight of the compound within 50 yards. For 4 days you follow game trails and stream beds, eating leaves and bark, drinking from streams without worrying about disease. Sujin develops fever on day 3, becomes delirious, and dies quietly on day 4. You dig her grave with bare hands and whisper her real name, Park Sujin from Incheon, to the spirits. For the first time since capture, you are completely alone. The Burmese village, where you finally stumble, emaciated and infected, provides rice and fish broth, but treats you with distant wariness. You represent something they don't want to acknowledge, war's reality for women. Allied forces eventually process you through repatriation camps, a nightmare of paperwork and bureaucratic indifference.
Lagi apa, Kakak?
Mrs. Kim,
Aku lagi
the older
nonton
Korean
YouTube.
woman, coaches you through the system. Tell them you are a factory worker. The truth makes officials uncomfortable, and uncomfortable officials don't approve paperwork. The merchant vessel the Busan takes 12 days. She spent most of it on deck, watching the ocean and trying to prepare for a homecoming that feels like attending your own funeral. 9 months later, you're standing in front of your own home. Your mother opens the door before you knock, aged decades in your absence, hair completely gray, face lined with permanent worry channels. Tunja? She whispers, using your real name for the first time in years. Your family has built a life during your absence. Your father has steady work with American supervisors. Your brother studies engineering in Seoul on an American scholarship. There's no space in their recovered world for the broken stranger you've become. That night, listening to your parents whisper about your hollow eyes and flinching reactions, you know you can't stay. Within a week, you leave
Tumben orang
Andong
cantik lagi
forever,
sepi, karena aku
carrying
nggak
a
seksi.
carefully crafted lie about finding work in
Kayaknya.
Seoul. Seoul in 1946 is a city reinventing itself, perfect for someone needing to disappear. You find factory work, rent corners of boarding house rooms, perfect the art of existing without leaving traces. You move 7 times, change jobs 12 times, develop supernatural abilities to survive chaos using skills learned in the compound, reading men's intentions, becoming invisible when necessary. The Korean War arrives like returning fever. Chinese soldiers, North Korean troops, American forces, the women like you, they're all potential
You're
threats.
so gorgeous.
You learn to
Thank
recognize
you.
army units moving through the city, disappear until they pass. By 30, you look 50. Malnutrition has left your teeth loose, hair thin. Chronic infections have damaged your reproductive system so severely, a back alley doctor calls it war damage, as if your body were a bombed building. Sometimes this feels like loss, the traditional life that might have provided cover. More often, it feels like mercy. You've become an expert seamstress, read voraciously, write poetry in your notebook. At 50, you realize you've spent more years hiding than you lived before it happened. You begin wondering if silence honors what happened to you, or if it's another form of imprisonment. Korea democratizes in the 1980s. Students occupy universities. Journalists investigate forbidden topics. The enforced silence that protected you begins feeling more like suffocation than safety. In 1990, you read about Professor Yoon Chung-ok's research into comfort women, the clinical term finally giving name to your experiences. We need survivor testimonies, she says, to ensure this history isn't forgotten. After 17 drafts over 3 months, you mail a letter offering testimony. 3 weeks later, they reply with compassion and professionalism. In your small apartment, you tell your story in fragments to researchers who believe you. Understand the historical context. Value your experience as evidence rather than shame. On August 14, 1991, you stand outside the Japanese embassy with 12 other survivors. Most wear masks to conceal identities. You choose to show your face. After 50 years of hiding, you want to be seen.
What the
Kim Hak-sun
fuck?
gives the first public testimony. When she finishes, you step forward. My name is Kim Sunja, you say, using your real name publicly for the first time since 1941. I was 17 when they took me. I want the world to know what happened to us. Your voice shakes, but grows stronger with each sentence. You describe the system for what it was: state-organized sexual slavery, used as a weapon of war and a crime that destroyed hundreds of thousands of lives. We were children with dreams and families and futures. You took all of that and tried to erase us from history. The response is immediate and overwhelming. Support letters from women's groups and individuals expressing admiration, but criticism too. Anonymous calls questioning your motives. Letters suggesting you maintain dignity through silence. On January 8, 1992, you joined the first of the now weekly Wednesday demonstrations, growing in size and international attention. You become a regular participant, testimony becoming part of Korean and international consciousness. You speak at universities, the UN, legislative bodies worldwide. Japan issues partial acknowledgements but avoids legal responsibility. They support an Asian Women's Fund that offers atonement money as private charity rather than government reparations. You join other survivors in rejecting these payments. We don't want charity. We want acknowledgement that crimes were committed. At 90, you reflect on 2 decades of advocacy. Legal goals remain unfulfilled. Japan hasn't accepted responsibility or provided adequate reparations. But cultural transformation is undeniable. The comfort women issue is now part of historical consciousness. Your testimony preserved for future generations. Museums,
Are you in America?
memorials, and
No, I'm
educational
not in
programs
America.
ensure the history you helped reveal
I'm in
will
Southeast
survive.
Asia.
University courses examine the comfort women system as a case study in systemic sexual violence and historical justice. Your decision to break silence has inspired other survivors worldwide to find their own voices. In your final years, you tell visiting relatives, everyone faces moments when they can choose silence or truth. I chose silence for 50 years. It protected me, but also imprisoned me. When I chose truth, it was frightening, but also liberating. The important thing is to choose consciously, rather than let fear decide.
I'm from Indonesia. Kok kayak ada bau tai ya? Kayak ada bau tai ya guys. Anyang. Panas. Dan bau tai. Ew. Dari depan anjir baunya. What the fuck? Bau guys. Gak suka guys, bau banget sumpah. Can we be friends? Yes, of course. Oh my god. Oh, it smells so bad. It stank. Should have closed my doors earlier. It stank. Bau banget guys, sumpah. Accept. No, thank you. Hai, Tok. Aku lagi, I don't know. Aku very sad. Kayak kenapa?